Hey, welcome to the Run for Cover podcast. My name is Bob, and I will be joined by three wonderful guys. Why don't you guys introduce yourselves? Dane?
Yeah, I am Dane. I work at Run for Cover Records. Uh, I've technically been here since 2011. I was an intern as Jeff was moving the label into its first office in Boston. Um, and the internship went well, so I'm still here.
Love a success story.
My name is Brian. I started interning at Run for Cover about 6 months after Dane. A little overlap, but not too much. But I also had a successful internship that turned into a career that has been 10 years long at this point, 10 plus.
This
Happy
is
to be
a
here.
advertisement for internships.
Yeah, geez, you guys successful interns. Most successful internships in America. Wow. Okay.
Yeah. The intern pilot program.
Yeah, guess how we know our other employees as well. My name is Jeff, and I started RFC in 2004.
So, I said my name before, but again, my name's Bob, and I've been aware of Run for Cover since 2004, and I'd consider myself a fan and friend of the label, very, very happy and pleased to be helping host this wonderful Run for Cover Records podcast. Which brings us to the question, guys, what is the Run for Cover podcast, and why are we doing this?
Yeah, we have talked about doing a Run for Cover podcast for a long time. The idea has come up. We have a pretty tight-knit group here. We love talking about all things RFC and have long struggled to figure out a way to do that in a podcast form. But this being 2024, and as you heard, Jeff started the label in 2004. This is the 20th anniversary of the label. So we thought that this would be a cool way to highlight some of the larger moments in the label's history by exploring some of the pillar records in the catalog and being able to talk to the people who made those records and just dig into the label's history a little bit.
Yeah. So, and I just kind of said, "Hey guys, can I get in on this?" I think it's one of the coolest ideas that I've heard about in a while. Is the idea of like how a label in this world, in the greater underground music world. 20 years is a long time, guys. So to see what Jeff has done, see what you guys have done for a large part of that, it's really incredible. But it comes back, and I think you guys would say this. It's celebrating the story of the label through some of the releases, and hopefully we get to talk about as many of those as we can. We got to pick a few of them. The first release that we chose here, you guys chose. I think you guys have done a great job picking those. Was Basement, Color Me in Kindness. Brian, why do you think that's the record that we chose to kind of kick things off with?
I think it was an easy start off point because I think for me and a ton of the people that I grew up with, finding out about this new slew of like independent artists that were kind of coming out of the hardcore world but doing something different sonically. Um, Color Me in Kindness kind of signaled this like change in the tone of like how these records were getting recorded, how they were being released, and how they were ultimately being perceived by a larger audience. I still remember the first day I heard Color Me in Kindness. I think I had stopped interning at the label because school was in session, but I remember that day in October, just like kind of going to band camp and hearing it, and just, from the start of whole, just being completely blown away and just being like, this sounds like a million things that I could place, but nothing that I've heard a band in this world do before. And it kind of signaled like a sea change to me. And it really, like, we've put out a lot of great records, a lot of important records to people's lives. This one is like basically that one for me, I think. And it's like when I think about in my darkest days when I'm I got 20 Photoshop tabs open and stuff like that, and I'm just like I'm grinding away. You know, you can kind of think about this record and be like, oh yeah, this is a good reason to do this stuff.
Hell yeah. Jeff, why do you think this was a good choice to be kind of a kickoff record for the Run for Cover podcast?
I think Basement was kind of like a one of the first times that we had, kind of started at zero with an artist that we signed, especially with them being from a different country. And it kind of felt like, we were like a real record label, having this band come over to America and people being excited about, even the record before Color Me in Kindness.
Yeah.
But I mean, we had never gotten a response so immediately upon releasing a record as we did this one. Everything else kind of took some time to grow and catch on. But yeah, people were really excited about it to pretty much like an unprecedented extent for us as a label.
So Dane, I want to hear your feelings too, but you also, you know what, you're like you really are the wizard behind the curtain on this whole podcast. So appreciation, you and Bryan, but why don't you give us some info on Basement, Color Me in Kindness, and then sprinkle in some of your own special love.
Sure. I think this record, it's interesting because a lot of people talk about debut records and how pivotal and foundational those can be. And this is Basement's second record. They put out some a few songs, an EP before their first LP, which was the RFC debut. And we also love I Wish I Could Stay Here. That was their first LP on RFC in 2011, the year that I was interning. So that was my intro to Basement. And like Bryan, I also remember hearing the unmixed versions that Jeff was playing in the office. The first time I heard the record and was like, whoa, this is a straight up rock. This is like a real rock record.
Right.
Really, really stood out. I think it's cool that it wasn't their first record or the first time anybody heard this band or anything like that, which kind of just speaks to how good these songs are.
Yeah, no, I mean, just bouncing off that, I think you're exactly right. I talk about this with people in bands and people just who are music nerds. A debut record gets people's attention because it's the first thing, right? Like, okay, this is new. You have new sheen, essentially. For the second record to grab people the way that Color Me in Kindness did, it has to mean it's not just exceptional, it's rare and special. And I think that's an easy descriptor to throw around for a lot of things, but I think it's really apropos for Color Me in Kindness. It's a really it's a special record. So and you mentioned, and this I thought was really interesting, because we're talking about you interning and talking about Bryan interning and talking about the most successful interns in I said America, but maybe more appropriately the world.
I'll take that, thank you.
The first Basement LP comes out in 2011.
Yeah, July 2011.
And then Color Me in Kindness comes out in
October 2012.
That's shocking to me.
Yeah, it's insane.
Because you now look back and those are two, this is about Color Me in Kindness, but look, the first record was also this milestone. We easily could have talked about that. We chose Color Me in Kindness for a million reasons that we're going to get into. But the time, just that tight window between these two things, is such a wow. Really? You guys you had to go that hard? You put these two records out back to back, that close together?
And if I may, beyond the record itself, the music, how it landed, I think, again, why kicking off with this record? I think the time period is also very important for the label as a whole, and our personal relationships in that regard as well, because Alex in particular has a pretty unique relationship with the label in that he also worked in the office with us for many years doing video content. So like this record kind of being the start of me and Bryan's relationship with the label, and then Alex coming in a professional, and obviously just becoming pretty good friends with all of us. For me, eventually a roommate. It's kind of an impetus for not just the band's relationship with the label, but also like these personal relationships as well, which I think is why it was so cool to be able to talk about this record with him, because, you know, for all of the conversations that we've had about the Basement's music and how that relates to RFC, just the biz of releasing Basement records. For me personally, this was a much different conversation than I've really even ever had with Alex. Talking about the record this intimately, about, you know, all the thoughts and feelings while it was happening, which was really cool, because despite having all of those conversations, whether professionally or as friends, a lot of this was new information for me as well.
What do you guys usually talk about?
Me and him talk a lot about old T-shirts and you know, cool finds. That's like where we really dig in. No, what I wanted to say was that I was amazed, and you know, to guess the cat's out of the bag, but we should have put this up front. We do have a fantastic conversation here with Alex Henery, guitarist of Basement, and boy, it really, you learn things, and I think you guys all know Al much better than me, and the fact that he was willing to be so open about not just the record, the process, the impact it had on him, but also the time, because one of the notes is that Basement breaks up shortly after this record's released, and that's one of the linchpins of the conversation. And this is just this really important time, and he gets into all that, and I think that's fantastic. Jeff and Bryan, before we get, move into the whole thing, was there anything that from this conversation with Al that was new information to you, or kind of surprising, or was revealing in some way?
I don't think there was for me.
Well, come on, yeah.
He knows everything. He's locked in.
I know, that's the thing. Yeah, okay. See, that's a good answer from him. But all right, how about you, Bryan?
Alex does a great job telling the story, but just sort of the impetus for the eventual reunion one. Basement is like a cat; they have 9 lives. They'll keep getting back together. You can't end them. But the story about that he tells about Andrew, who does vocals in Basement, his dad kind of basically like asking a question that started the gears turning in his head of being like, what if I did try to do this band as a real thing, and getting those gears turning was really fascinating, but also just inspiring. And I don't know, made me really happy, because I think that seeing this band in all their iterations with, as we also touch on, the same guys in the band has been so, such a joy to watch, as, we've grown as a label, and I've grown as an employee and as a person. Employee first. Thank you, Jeff. But no, it's been awesome to see, and I'm just so happy that Basement is back, and we all got to witness the first show in this sort of string of comeback shows. And it's not just reunion stuff, but they got new music coming as well. We get into that very briefly, but yeah.
Put that up front. New Basement music is coming, which is fantastic news for everyone. So before we move to the actual conversation with Al, I asked before we started recording, pulling back the curtain, a little pre-production, Dane, do you have any good Al stories that we didn't get into in this episode?
I have too many. I could launch a podcast with just those if we wanted to. The one thing that came to mind was we lived in what was the first RFC office. We were roommates there, which was just a couple blocks away from Fenway Park. So whenever Boston sports teams would win championships, which is relatively frequent.
That's right, baby.
That's right.
Yeah. you know, all the like the parades, everybody in the streets is right outside of our apartment. So we would engage in those celebrations. And Alex had an old beater of a car that was full of dents and made crazy noises and barely could get down the road. And in that traffic of everybody flooding the streets after, I think it was the Patriots had won.
Okay.
And me and Alex drove his car for 3 hours through downtown Boston, shouting at people to jump on his car. So everybody's hooting and hollering, and we're driving down Boylston Street just screaming, "Get on the car, get on the car." And people got on the car, and the the roof was caving in, the hood was caving in, and his entire car was just like mashed potatoes after the Patriots won the Super Bowl.
Well, I think I would encourage everyone to get in the car, get on the car,
Get on
take
the
a ride,
car.
get on the car, take a ride with us. Without further ado, this is our conversation with Al Henery from Basement on Color Me in Kindness. Well, we have a really, really nice day today. I'm very excited to speak with all of you, but kind of most importantly, excited to speak to you, Al. Al, do you want to do your own personal intro, or should we collectively do one for you?
Please, you guys do one for me. I don't want to do my own.
All right. Well, I think then we're going to do this as a round robin. Al, I got to meet you, I believe for the first time when I came through the Run for Cover offices, and I felt instantly connected to you over talking about weird old shirts, not of particularly cool, but we started talking about shirt brands. So that was a wonderful introduction to you. Jeff, how would you introduce Al?
I would introduce Al as a prolific guitarist of the rock and roll variety, and an artist in many different ways.
I like
love
that.
it. Dane, and how would you introduce Al to the world?
Uh-oh.
I do love the question. Uh, wow.
Put him on the spot.
I would say, well, because the thing is, when I think about Al, I think about more than just his guitar playing, because he really is just an overall, generally creative individual. So that extends to music and photography and film and other subcultures that only continue to increase over time. So just an overall creative force.
Really fast snowboarder.
See, I'm curious. I think I completely dismissed the whole, plays guitar part. Al, of those, prolific guitar player, creative force,
That's too much, but
a really fast snowboarder is pretty nice
yeah,
too.
yeah,
I gotta be
yeah.
honest.
I'll take that.
All
Yeah,
right.
we
Well,
can-
so we are here to talk a little bit about what I think of as not just a special record, but like a legitimately just cool record. Basement, Color Me in Kindness. Guys, I think this is a fantastic place to start for anyone who's listened to anything on Run for Cover. Not only because it stands out, but I feel like it opens people up to it. Al, when's the last time you listened to this record, given that it's something you had a little bit of a hand in?
all the way through, maybe 2 years ago when we were doing the show Outbreak. So I just wanted to
Okay.
go over all the songs because we pretty much played every song on the record. Actually, I think we played every song. Um, and recently I've been listening to a few of them again, just relearning some, making sure I'm good. But very rarely do I listen to my own records. But occasionally,
Right.
you have the moment when before it's out, right? When it's still yours, and man, it's just like the best. It's the best feeling because like there's no opinions except maybe a few friends who've shown it to. I just drive around in my car and I just listen to it all the time, like whatever record it is, whether it's Fiddlehead or Basement, and it's so it's exciting because you want to share it, but it's yours in that moment. And to you, you're hearing all these things. Nothing is, you're not influenced by anyone's comment or good or bad, it's a very special time. I remember driving with Nick on the last Fiddlehead record, and it was like kind of having that moment. Like, this is the last time it's ours, like truly ours, and then it's gone. You probably won't listen to it that much because it will just be it's out there. But yeah, that was probably so I haven't listened to it in full in a while.
Okay.
But when the songs come on, yeah, it feels good. It is a definitely a record where when the songs come on, I do feel really good and loads of really good memories.
Well, that's hopefully some of the stuff we'll get into today. What we did do some work beforehand. We tried, this is a professional POD.
Okay.
But something that kind of came across the desk last minute, Jeff, you'll laugh at us for this. Dane messaged me and says, "Hey, is there any last minute thoughts or questions you had?" And I was like, "No, I've been thinking about it. I've listened to the record. I've been doing this. Is it true, Jeff and Al, obviously you too, this record was recorded barely over a year after the prior record? Is that correct?"
Yeah, because this was the story is that I said to the guys, we knew we were gonna stop being a band. Andrew had said, "I want to go back to school. I don't actually," because I had said it looks like we could do this full time, and he was like, "No, I don't want to," and that was like, okay. So it was, so I offered, "Hey, do we want to tour Australia and Japan, or?" We could squeeze in recording because we were going to already play Sound and Fury and we were going to tour back from the West Coast to the East Coast with Daylight, now Super Heaven. And everyone agreed, let's record. So it nearly didn't happen. We nearly went to Japan and Australia, but everyone said, no, let's record. We had a few songs. And so, yeah, it was like kind of a parting, like, let's just get these songs out. We've been playing them, they're fun.
That's a decision too, to choose like, hey, let's document this, as opposed to, I'm assuming, and I could be incorrect. Would that have been the first time you went to Japan, first time you went to Australia?
Correct. Yep. And this was our first time ever on it would have been the first time on the West Coast, second time in America.
Right. Right. Wow. So with that said, because you said a couple things that were really interesting, but before we recorded, again in this pre-work, the pre-interview conversations we have, Dane, Jeff, Bryan, those are going to be the ones that are like, man, where are the recordings of that? Come on, guys. One of the points, Jeff, you said it. What do you think is one of the biggest time for Color Me in Kindness? The story is kind of that it's at a breakup point for you guys in Basement. Is that right?
Correct. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, like I said, Andrew had told me that he did not want to do this full time and that he wanted to go on hiatus and go back to school. So,
really quick, what was your instinct right then on a personal level? Because obviously,
angry,
okay,
mad,
good, okay.
like just, I mean, yeah, I was full in. I mean, this was my dream. We were signed to run for cover. We toured in America. The people liked the LP, and it definitely, is in that era of like, I guess it was just post MySpace, so it was like, it felt like, I would see like a tiny write-up in like alternative press, and my mind would be blown. I'd be run to the store, and like in England, you have to remember everything is elevated because we're in England. This is not.
Right.
This is crazy. So like, Instagram, all that stuff hasn't happened yet. So there's still this like people are buying magazines and there's radio stuff everything felt like a big deal. So the fact that we're on an American label and we have the chance to go to these places, this is the dream. And right there, he says the dream stops now. Like, no, I don't want to do it. I want to make sure I have my education sorted. And yeah, for me, it was very hard. I think, well, I don't know if I can speak for everyone, but for me in that moment, it was really tough. But
Yeah, Al, I'm curious because like I know like you were the first person that I talked to about basement stuff. And to me, you were kind of the point person of the band. I don't know if that was like still the case around that time, like with Jeff at like from a label perspective, but were you the person who had the direct conversation with Jeff about what was going to happen with this record and what you wanted to do with it?
That's a great question because I don't think I can remember that
Yeah,
actually.
I don't really remember having that conversation either.
That's
I,
oh my gosh.
I'm trying
This
to
is
think.
the point.
At some point, somebody had to kind of be like, "Hey, we want to do the record, but also we're not going to be."
I'm wondering if they're going to
No,
lean
yeah.
back on the time. There was a time difference, so we just sent an email. It's like a fax breakup, man. Okay.
Yeah, no,
Well, you knew before you recorded the record, right?
yeah, we knew going in. Like I said, it was the option of recording or touring. So
Yeah, so I guess it might have been different if you had like delivered the record to us and we listened to it and we're like, this is incredible. And then you're like, yeah, we're also breaking up.
Oh, by the way,
yeah, no, I don't remember us having a conversation. I obviously would have kept you in the loop. It was, we always had good communication. But I can't remember a specific. I mean, I remember telling other people and them being like, "You're insane." Like, everyone. I
give
remember
me the
touring.
one. Give me the conversation.
The best one is Jared from TUI. We were touring in the UK with this lineup. Holy cow! Your Demise, which was a British hardcore band, Trapped Under Ice, Man Overboard, and Basement, and it was sponsored by the magazine Rock Sound. And we did the UK and Europe. And I remember we played the song Hole. We played the song maybe Bad Apple, maybe like a few other tracks just live. We'd written them and we were just having fun playing them live. And I remember Jared being like, "Yo, what's up with these songs?"
Yeah.
And I was like, "Oh, we haven't recorded them yet. We're like, we might record them. We're going to stop playing shows." Andrew wants to. He's like, "You're so dumb. You're so dumb. These songs are so good. You're so stupid."
Look, and when it comes from someone like Jared is a high key music fan and also a high key direct person. So
oh yeah,
I can hear that coming from him.
he was like, "You're so dumb." And I was like, "Well, it is what it is." I was like, I'm like scared, but also like, thank you.
So this is the thing. You responded so directly about feeling anger, and obviously we're talking about something that happened 12 years ago. What were those conversations like? And is that something you've ever revisited with the dudes? Like, yeah, you remember when we sat down and you told me this? I couldn't believe it. Like, what was the conversation like?
Yeah, we have good communication as a band, and I've known Andrew since early days of high school, and I could totally understand where he was coming from. Like I really could. It was just hard for me because hard for all of us, I think, because we all were very excited. But at the same time, I'm not going to deny someone to get further education and make sure, that the record could have flopped and everything terrible, and then it's just like, oh, we just, oh crud, now what do I do? So I understood. It was the gut reaction of just like, oh, that hurts,
Yeah.
But it wasn't like I hate you, like we're not friends. It was nothing like that. No, it was like
Good.
I was stoked for him. I was like, awesome, go get your degree. Like, obviously it's a double-edged sword. You feel the pain, but you feel excited for your friend. And we'll get into it later. But when I was in the studio, I'm just gonna say I knew we'd play shows again, and for me, it was just the waiting game. I knew we would play shows, and so I had to just wait it out. I think the hardest part for me was then going home from America, getting back to my parents' home, and being like, "All right, what am I gonna do?" And that's a whole nother story. But me basically talking to Jeff and in Boston, long story short, end up coming out to America and working for Run for Cover and starting my whole career with like video and photo. But that's a different thing. But that, if anything, I owe Andrew that because it pushed me to then try, take $500, pack a bag, and go buy a one-way ticket to America, and that's my life, So I owe Andrew that because like I probably would have never thought I was good enough and able to do anything that I've done with regard to photo and video. And look I'm still doing it now. That's my career, is being creative and working with bands and working in music, and I'll do that for the rest of my life. So I do owe Andrew that. So I'm thankful.
So, I mean, by the way, $500 in 2012 money was still not a lot of money. New
Yeah.
listeners. We're not talking about like
Oh,
the
yeah. By the way, I'm like, yeah, my moving into Philly with my friends, like, yeah, just move into our basement. Like, you don't have to pay rent. And I'm like, okay, okay. So 500, yeah, that could last me for food for the year. It's like, like, have no idea how I'm gonna make money in Philadelphia. Haven't even confirmed where I'm gonna live in Boston. Like, totally just winging it.
And so Philly was just a stopgap on your
Yeah,
way to Boston because you knew people there and you could post up while you figured the other
exactly.
shit out.
Jeff had just told me, "Hey, move to America. You can work for run for cover." I didn't even move. I don't even think I told Jeff I was. I think I told Jeff when I got to America. Oh, by the way, I'm here. Hi. Like, were you being serious? Like, because I'm actually here. And eventually he's like, yeah. And I turn up to Boston, maybe it was like a year later. And he was like, yeah, you can stay at this house. I was like, okay. So I go to this apartment. This is so good. I was like, okay. So I turn up. This guy, Kevin Duquette, who ran Top Shelf Records, was there. And he's like, yeah, you can stay in this room. It was a fully furnished room. It was not someone hadn't moved out. I was like, you sure? He's like, yes. I go to sleep. I wake up at 3 in the morning, and the guy was like, hey, yeah, I'm back from tour a little early. And I was like, oh, this is like the worst day of my life. Like, I'm like, I'm like, I don't even have a room. I end up sleeping on the floor for like 2 months. It's like just totally winging it.
so
Totally
this
winging it.
this is the naivete and beauty of, I guess, youth, you know.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Brian, really quick, I mean, producer Brian's jumping in here. Brian, how far is Philadelphia to Boston, really quick?
Just off the top of my head, Bob, we're looking at about 315 miles.
So that's good. Jeff's like, move to America. You're like, you can work for Run for Cover, and it's like, oh yeah, here I am, 350 miles away.
Classic,
Yeah.
classic British guy coming to America.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't have any of this planned out. I mean, I think within a few days of me going to Philadelphia, I was already jumping in the van with Title Fight and Tiger's Jaw and just going off and just, oh, next thing you know, I'm in Richmond, Virginia. I'm in, I'm not even charging anyone. I'm just taking pictures and videos and like just hanging out, just winging it. And then eventually I'm like, oh yeah, I actually didn't want to move. Had a really good time in Philadelphia, made a lot of friends there. And I definitely had a conversation with like kind of like a family friend. He was like, you need to. Like, I know you're having a good time, but like that was the plan. You need to follow through. And so that's when I hit Jeff up. So
Didn't somebody in Philadelphia in the basement that you lived in live in a tent next to you in the basement?
no, no, but people they would always tell everyone, oh yeah, you can crash. And then they would tell in my room in the basement. And I would come down there. There'd be like a band on tour in my room. I'd be like, what the heck? I thought
They're
this
like,
is
look, you
mine.
pay zero in rent.
Yeah, it's mine.
Oh.
There's a mattress down there on the floor. That's mine.
I mean, so the fun part about this record, Color Me in Kindness, uh, is that it intertwines with this really kind of important point for you, as you've kind of illustrated personally. So I want to get into that, but you also mentioned, Title Fight, Tiger's Jaw, Jump in the Van. What role did those bands and Run for Cover kind of play? I'm going to backtrack a little bit. I don't want it to be like the basement origin story, but those were important bands and people for you, and kind of how you formed your connection with Run for Cover, and then moving forward, Basement as a band in general. Is that right?
Totally. I mean, me growing up and being into music, it always, before I found hardcore and this like kind of alternative world, it always felt like, the fan is here and the band is here. And there was just this giant chasm of separation. And, I'd go see the bands like Block Party or like Dropkick Murphys, Rancid, and it was just like, wow, so incredible, but they're just so far away, like, and I was like I was proud of being like, oh, I'm like alternative. Like I can go and see like a ska band and a punk band and then like an indie band. So I didn't really I had a scene within my friends, but I didn't know like, oh, I'm just a strictly indie kid or I'm a punk kid or I'm a hardcore kid. It was just like, oh, I like a little bit of everything. And then I remember Andrew once, I think his song on MySpace was Tiger's Jaw, playing Submarine, that one. And
That one, yep.
yep. And we got talking. He was like telling me about this band, and then he tells me about this label, and we're looking through all the bands on the label, and it just, I for the first time ever, it felt like I was deep diving on a label that I liked. Everything Agent, Agent at the time, Long Island band, we were like, oh my goodness, this is incredible. This is incredible. Like, and then it was just that it just began. I was like, this is what I love. Like, and this was like more like a hyper focused kind of love of a certain kind of thing that felt like my own. There were younger people, I was understanding like kind of how hardcore worked with regard to like, oh, you can just set up your own show. Oh, you can just make your own merch. Oh, like people can get on stage. Like everything was being broken down at this point. But yeah, that was the first time that I was like, oh, I'm following a label. Like I felt like there was something going on that I was really excited about. So yes, was very excited about all those bands. And I guess even being from England, it felt so far away. And not that they felt like way up here, but yeah, definitely the first time meeting those guys was like, oh, this is kind of crazy. And then like 10 minutes later, it's like out the window, they're like, we're chatting, we're talking. It's just like, oh, okay, we're the same. This is awesome. But yeah, definitely viewing everything through a screen, you can get everything becomes elevated. You can put
Right.
people on pedestals, or you can think that's like larger than life. When in fact it was just like, oh, they're also living in like kind of suburbs or like kind of outside these big cities, and like they're going to like punk shows or hardcore shows, and we just had a lot of shared interests and life experiences. So we became fast friends.
So then that brings me to a couple of questions, because I do want to talk about the sonic nature of Color Me in Kindness and Basement in at large. Because you talked to, I mean, I think that's when I think about Run for Cover, when I think about a band like Basement, a band like Tiger's Jaw, a band like Title Fight, bands like a lot of these bands from that time, but even going forward from there, there's been this, what is it, an identification that embraces so many of those elements. You talk about indie, you talk about punk, you talk about hardcore, you talk about all this stuff, but also saying, well, I don't feel like I am just that per se. Like I feel like I'm more than that, or that, more than that. I don't say that in some sort of slanted way, but I feel like I'm an amalgamation of all those things. When it came time to work on what ended up being Basement, what was your goals as a band, and what was sonically, what were you going for at the beginning, and then how does that evolve to where we get in Color Me in Kindness?
That's a great question. Um, early stuff was just pure. I want to be on Run for Cover. That was, and I want to be sonically part of these bands. Um, so yeah, that was definitely how we were informing most of our musical choices.
Yeah.
Bearing in mind, I also had never written music before. Like I didn't really think that was even possible. It was only through Andrew. Like I played bass initially in Basement,
Yeah.
and I think one time I like wrote a riff that's on the demo that was like a bass line, and I was just like kind of messing around. He was like, basically, like, that's writing music. Like he had to inform me like that. Yeah, that's cool. What's that? Like, yeah, keep playing that. That's good. And I was like, oh, I'm not just playing the root notes. I was playing like kind of a riff. And so a lot of it, when I think back, I was thinking about Covet the other day. I know we'll get to that, but like
Mhm.
I just like writing some of these songs in my basement on a tiny practice amp. I have no idea what I'm doing. I'm just, truly just the pure just messing around on my guitar and like pressing record, and that's pretty much how I've done it ever since. It's just as natural, trying to get it as natural as possible. Oh, you're riffing,
Right.
it feels good, press record. Don't even know anything about it. Send it to Andrew, waiting for confirmation to know like if he thinks it's worth working on. But
I like that. I wonder how many have gotten the
oh
no, let's cut this one.
no, he's usually pretty chill. It's more
Okay,
me
see that?
me not sending stuff because
Okay.
I like until I feel like maybe I'm like, is this something? Then I'll wait. I want confirmation. I need that.
Yeah.
If Andrew was able to give you the confidence, if he was more of a songwriter at that point and was like you're doing it too, like had he like where was he at in terms of writing music at that point? Had he already done a bunch of other stuff to where you're like this guy knows how to write songs, so if he says that this is good, then I know.
100%. Yeah, he was in a band called Jason Gigolo, and
Oh, of course, Jason Gigolo, of course,
sorry,
Yeah.
the
yeah,
iconic,
Yeah,
yeah,
no, yeah,
iconic,
for sure.
Ipswich's finest.
yeah, Ipswich finest ska band, third wave. Let's go. Yeah, yeah. No, so I was like their number one fan. So I would see him playing like in this band to like 20 people and being like, oh my goodness, this is legendary. So yeah, he wrote music, and he just always had a natural gift for just, the first time I ever met him, he was at like a house party playing Sublime and singing, and I'm like, whoa, wow, this guy's cool. Um, but yeah, it's I definitely, yeah, I look to him as my kind of, oh, he knows what he's talking about. Like he knows, like he was putting me onto music, and he just, yes, I definitely felt like I had to look to him for kind of confirmation. So like he got me into hardcore. He was like showing me this different world. So I was like, oh, I'm following your lead here, you know.
That's cool. That's cool.
But I want to get back just real quick just to
Yeah.
the original question. So yes, first part was definitely like we want to be on our run for cover. So that was informing a lot of it. And then, you hear some feedback and people are like, oh, it sounds too much like this or that. And you're like, yeah. Yeah, at first you're like, yeah, they're right. And so then we're on the first LP, when we find out, okay, we're skipping so much, but when I hear from Jeff that he's like, yeah, we should do some stuff together, and I'm like what? And he's like, LP, and I'm like, holy crap, this is incredible. I'm like,
Jeff, do you know this? Do
I
you know
probably
this
want to
story?
scream.
Yeah.
I want to scream. Like I'm like, holy, like we got put on a sampler at Warped Tour. I saw, and I don't even know if it got confirmed. I just see our name on a sampler being passed out around Warped Tour. I'm like, oh my days, we're literally we like kind of on run for cover, but we're not. We're on a sampler. Like by proxy, we are on the label.
There's our name. There's the logo.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. And so after that, I figured there was going to be some form of conversation, and the conversation happened, and I was like, holy moly, we're actually going to be on run for cover. And then he was like, yeah, do you want to do LP? And so that's when there was more. I think the influences shifted to lean in a little bit more towards like kind of the 90s emo stuff, like
Right.
Sunny Day Real Estate, Christie Front Drive. Like, I mean, the list just goes on and on. But at that point, I do remember specifically, me and Andrew were trying to go as deep as we could to find obscure random, 90, like on Blogspot, and like people would post stuff and you would try and find random bands and send them to one another and kind of outdo each other with how niche they were. But yeah, that of course I was like, there's also a little bit of American football. There's some little riffs that I remember. I was like trying to do some little breathe. I think it had some like, I don't know what the word is, like pull-offs, hammer-ons, like some little twinkly stuff that I was like, okay,
noodling around.
Yeah, noodling around. Okay, I want to get a little bit of that in there. That's wrong record. Sorry. We're skipping ahead, but yes,
No, it's okay. It's good.
I
You can lay the groundwork and then we get to the thing.
need to slow it down. Yeah, no. So I wish I could stay here. Definitely going for a bit more of that kind of like emo kind of sound, and then with Color Me in Kindness, if we just do a broad stroke, it was kind of like, yeah, some of the earlier songs like Hole, Andrew wrote that song, and we were just like, oh, this is kind of heavier, more blown out like sound, and
bigger guitar sound for sure.
Yeah, for sure. It was like less. And
but the difference when I hear it as an outsider, I wasn't there writing the songs with you guys. I hear a much bigger. It's almost the transition from 90s emo to looking at some of the heavier alt stuff, and I hear
100%.
I hear things like Failure. You know what I mean? And it's just, oh wow, like
yeah.
And those two sounds to me always ran parallel, not necessarily but they were in the same stream. And how you were able to, and some of it was track to track. I hear it in different songs more so and less so. I hear a blending of that I made me want to ask the difference between LP1 and LP2. This being LP2, Color Me in Kindness, the second record here. I wanted to find out how intentional that was and how much you kind of when you say whole, that's kind of like a tone setting piece. Would that be accurate?
Yeah, no, for sure. And like I was just thinking about, I remember writing the riff for Spoiled and sending it to Andrew. I have it on my phone somewhere. And of course, it's just pure quicksand. It's like I'm just like, yeah, someone has shown me quicksand. I'm like, this heavier sound just feels, again, we're not overthinking it. It wasn't like, okay, this is our mission statement. This is what we're gonna do. It was just pure excitement of like, people are sharing music, you're finding out about stuff. You're like, it's a mix also because Andrew brought some songs fully. Like he brought Whole completely done. He wrote Pine completely, like, and was just, here's the song, everyone. And I was like, whoa, this is awesome. And then Covet, I had written the riff for, and like Spoiled, and there's again, it was just kind of going back and forth. And then some stuff was written in the studio. But yes, Failure. I think I'd been in the States a few times on different tours before this, and we were more integrated with the RFC world, and now other people are showing us stuff, and you're finding out about new bands that maybe you hadn't heard before. But I don't really know. I guess I leaned back into Pearl Jam. I grew up listening to a Pearl Jam live cassette that was like really informative to me, and like Rage Against the Machine, and like I guess even Green Day, but like that kind of more heavier, bigger sound. I don't know how or why that's where we pivoted towards, but I think maybe after that first LP, it wasn't like, oh, let's just double down on the emo stuff. I think it was like, okay, it's time to like, maybe it was just what we were listening to. Yeah, maybe it's just a natural like, oh, this just seems like a fun thing to play, and it was something a little heavier. And I definitely think we, at that point, had kind of carved out a little bit more of our own sound because it is a blend. You still hear some of that like emo. Andrew's, his lyrics and stuff are pretty like emotional side, like drawing from like personal life experiences, and then music was just being informed by what we were listening to and just what we were excited by.
Yeah. I also, I think about this when I hear records, and I'd like to talk about Covet too momentarily, but I've always thought that Basement was a lyrics forward, vocals forward, and then certainly lyrics forward band.
Mm-hmm.
Was that something you considered when you would write? Is the interplay between what Andrew's doing vocally and then what you were doing? Because
No,
it's no, okay, it
no.
just kind of
Well,
comes out.
I literally can't write. So no, it's always like the music. For me, I write a riff and then I hand it off to Andrew to then put vocals over. I've never heard him write lyrics or melodies and then gone and wrote a riff.
Right.
And more recently, maybe the last 5 years, every time I write a riff, I'll sing a melody over it and send it over. Just anything, if just ad lib, nothing,
Yeah,
no
you thinking
made up
here's
words.
guide to it, right? Sure.
Just because to me it sounds more full, and maybe it would prompt Andrew to come up with an idea. So I always, now at this point, for them, I'd say 90% of the time I sing over the riffs. Just why not? It just makes it feel more full to me. But I'm never like this is the one. But sometimes we take a little bit of what's on there and it does work. But yeah, no, I've never been informed by a melody first. It's always been I just write the riff, whatever feels good.
That tracks.
Yeah.
But when because I think about Covet, and it's so dynamic, but I've listened to it thinking pull the vocal track off of it, right? And the song is it's almost heavy. I mean, it's a heavy track as is,
Yeah.
but without that vocal track on it, I'm like, ooh, I wonder if this was thought like, ooh, I'm curious, like the first time you heard what Andrew did vocally on it, what
Oh,
was your
I know.
response?
I know. It's probably to me, it feels like a life-defining moment because I have it so clearly in my head. And
Well, we have this on paper.
you do, yeah.
From Andrew. So we, the record turns 10, we do a deluxe reissue, spruce some things up, we put some alternate versions on. And in the liner notes, everybody kind of just like pooled some thoughts about what they were thinking about when recording the record. And he says, I remember so vividly the day Sorry. I remember so vividly the room with the bunk beds and waking up every day so excited. It being our first proper time in America in an American studio, recording what felt like an actual record was really special. I can remember when Alex sheepishly sent me the chords to Covet in an iPhone voice memo, playing it down as he always does because for some reason he really respects my opinion as I do his. I was visiting my mom, staying on a sofa bed. I remember it being the middle of the night and grabbing a guitar, and the main vocal melody just came out. A lot of the time, that's just how it happens. A chord progression resonates with me, and I just start singing, and what comes out comes out. So that just like happened. Like this song that now is having this, you know, I think what's interesting about what's happening with Covet now is that it's obviously had this larger moment in recent years, and to me, it's not like a like why this song, because I feel like it truly was a standout song from like the moment that it was written. Um, so it's not why this song as much as it is like interesting to see it have such a second life, more than a decade after it was written. Um, but the fact that something like that comes out of uh, it's almost like a first take situation is is a pretty wild thing to think about, where people
Yeah.
try to write songs like that as much as they can and never get there, you know?
Yeah, I go back and think about that all the time with all the it's almost like I wish I could go back in time to that previous self in the basement and be like, just keep writing, just keep writing while your mind is pure and
You're hot. You're hot.
you have no understanding or fear of like what other people think or like expectations, and it's just pure excitement, and you really don't know what you're doing. And I try and tap into that because I've had other times where it's just been like you just overthink and you want to recreate some of those songs and you want to recreate those emotions, and when you try it's like you can't. How can you enter that headspace? And that like you said,
I mean,
sometimes it's just the luck of the draw of just being
I think
the
it's the
right place,
magic of
right
the
time.
moment, right? That's
It is,
creation,
it
right? It's
is.
creativity. Yeah.
Yeah, and again, you're right, Dane. There's a lot of people trying to recreate, and I feel like so much that you hear songs where you just like you just when you hear it, it's fake, it's false, it's been like they're trying to do something that's
Right.
genuine, and it's not. And when you hear something genuine, you just know. It just like just a vocal take or just it's there's just something about like a good song. And it's strange. It's like how can you say that objectively? But there's just some things you just know, and you can
Look,
just feel it.
I think anyone who feels music or enjoys music with true passion will tell you, like, it's a track or it's not, and that you can feel it. It pulses. It's different, and that's the stuff that's eternal. Is that song will live on forever. So I want to get back because we got on this great branch on Covet.
Yeah.
First time you heard it, Al, what did you go
Well,
with the vocals? Because
yep,
obviously,
yeah, and Andrew's right. I sent the riff almost. I think I just forgot about it. Like I don't even remember. I don't even remember tracking the music, right? So we would have tracked the music first, as always, in the studio, and Andrew's doing vocals. And so my memory that is just burned into my brain is I'm waking up on these bunk beds in the studio, and I can hear Andrew doing vocal takes, and I hear the chorus melody as I'm waking up, and it's almost like I'm hearing it like, wait, what? And I like getting out of bed, walking towards the studio as they're like tracking, and I just knew as soon as I heard it, I was like, oh my goodness, what is this song? Like I was just like, I'd never heard him send me a demo. I'd never heard an idea. We'd never played it live. That was a pure, and it's probably the only time I've ever heard an idea where I just knew. There wasn't even
right.
I knew it was a great song. It was just, and I'm so happy even saying that out loud. I don't care if anyone thinks that's arrogant or
No,
whatever, because I've never had it since, and I truly believe it's like one in a million. Like you just can't. I don't know. I just knew it was a great song, and I was like honestly kind of shocked. It was like, oh, whoa, like what? This is our song? Like it was just, yeah, it was
that's
so exciting. It was like the best feeling ever. And I think I was just like, what is happening?
no
Like,
one in the sound of your voice is going to take that the wrong way, because they can hear that it's not you saying that as like some braggadocious thing. It's you saying that as a like, oh my God, like this is we made this. It's like the pride and love of something that isn't purely yours, but that you have a part in, and that's like beautiful.
yeah, it's so exciting when stuff like that happens. Where it's just that happens in the moment. And there was no like overthinking. There was no like 20 revisions of me like, oh, what if you just tweak like the melody here? And it's just like, that's what's so beautiful about it, is that there was no writing sessions. There was no other producers. There was no other writers. It was just, oh, Andrew had this natural inkling to sing this way. I sent him, it was just so organic. And for it all to line up is just like such a cool story. Just that it's just like, oh, and I heard it for the first time, him tracking the vocals. Like, it
Oh,
was
it's
great.
amazing.
It was a great feeling.
Jeff, you, meanwhile, Basement breaks up, says, "Hey, we're breaking up, but we do want to go record a record." And you're like, "Yeah, sounds good. Let's do it." Is that how it goes down?
Yeah, definitely. I doubt there was any more discussion about it.
And because you knew that it was going to be, you were excited about it. You were excited just where they were. But sonically, did what you first heard when and I guess I should backtrack a little bit. Had you heard demos of these songs? Did you have an inkling of where their sound was going? Or was it kind of just, hey, I have faith in this band. I'm going to just see what happens?
Al, would you have sent me demos? I feel like I might have heard like a whole demo or
You
something.
might have heard Whole because we'd played it live, and I think did we record it at the BBC or something? Maybe you've heard a demo. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think we premiered Whole live, like a live recording before we actually recorded it. I might be wrong on that, but yes, we did some stuff, and I
I
think
think
you,
I think I had a vague idea of
Yeah.
but
what.
just probably just Whole, right? I don't think you would have heard anything else.
Yeah, that's possible. I mean, I didn't really have a very clear idea of where they were going sonically, but I mean, a big part of just the willingness to do the record and not really take the breakup too much into account was that like people were really excited about the record as well. I mean, people were really excited when the first record came out. So there was a lot of anticipation about it, and of course, no one knew that the band was breaking up yet. Um, but yeah, I don't remember being too familiar with the record when I first heard it, but I definitely remember hearing Covet for the first time.
Yeah, it's a striker. It hits you. Now, I'm going to backtrack just a bit. Basement starts swimming into your consciousness. And what prompted you to go, hey, I do want to work with this band? Because look, backtracking and just as a general thing, it's one of the most interesting things when you are a creative person working at a record label, running a record label like you do, Jeff. There's these moments where the piston fires and goes, yeah, I do want to work with them. What was that like? What was that moment like for you with Basement?
I mean that moment has changed so much over the course of the label. Obviously, it's a
Yeah,
very
of
different
course.
feeling and different thing now. But back in those days was when it was pretty much like the most exciting thing in my life to, like find a new band to be working with. My first, it was definitely Title Fight that told me about Basement. I think they had gone. Did they meet you in the UK, Al, on tour or something?
Yeah, yeah. Well, me and Andrew had met them but prior, but yeah, I think we played some shows with them in the UK. Yeah.
Yeah, so they came home. It was probably around the time that the Title Fight 7-inch was coming out. And they told us about him, and we pretty much just stayed in touch with Al. Or I guess when you guys were working on stuff, you would send it over. And I think there was some initial really rough demos before the 7-inch. They might have been demos of the 7-inch.
Mm,
And I mean, like Al said, it was very along the lines of kind of the stuff we were already doing.
yeah.
So it made a lot of sense. And then they recorded two more songs, which were demos for the first LP. And I thought those were even better. So yeah, it made a lot of sense. And the idea of working with an international band was pretty interesting at the time as well.
Yeah, because that was they were their first, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We were the first. I was so hyped. And I also remember telling everyone, like, you're not allowed to sign any other international artist, especially from England, without my approval.
Well, I hope that they're stuck to that to this day. If not, we
Hey,
can we can
I
talk about it.
showed the guys arm lock. I was like, hey, check out
True.
this band. I was like, I'm the A&R out here getting those international.
So then we kind of get to the moment that we've already talked about it a little bit, the conversation, but that is the story, is that you guys had decided we're going to break up. You come to the States. Let's talk a little bit about the recording process. You had some songs, you went into the studio. Where did you record? Give us the breakdown, all that fun stuff.
Yeah, I mean, this was again another reason why it nearly didn't happen, which was finding a studio. I think at this point Andrew was more clued in on like kind of sound of like how he wanted it to sound. And I love Ian Bolt, who we recorded our first LP with, but that's a hardcore punk DIY spot in a industrial estate, like a kind of leaky practice room. I love you, Bolty, and this is no diss. It was the best time of my life. But there was like a sketchy gym on this like really like it was just like a very British like kind of we were in Nottingham at the time where I was at university. So it was like pretty low key. I love it.
Yeah.
But it was low key and we really had no idea what we were doing.
And you
Um
thought you want to do something different going into Color Me and
y-
Kindness.
yes, I think after that was like Andrew specifically had maybe grander ideas of how he wanted to sound. So I remember seeing Title Fight do a video live session at Panda Studios. It was called The Waiting Room, I'm pretty sure. And where uh they would have bands come by and perform live and they would film it and produce it and put it out. And I watched that and I was like, oh, this sounds awesome. It looks cool. And I was like, oh, he's based in California and based in again, it's so funny because the show Sound of Fury is in uh where Oxnard or whatever,
He
like
was in
outside.
Oxnard,
Yeah.
Ventura County, somewhere. Yeah.
So in my mind, I go, oh, he's based in California. We should. So I have no idea the difference. Like that's 6 hours, 5 hours away. But I'm like, yeah. He's in California too. Awesome.
So wait, where was the studio?
The studio's up in the Bay. It's up in. It's like in oh, what is the exact place?
All right, you keep telling the story. We'll figure it out.
Yeah. Pull up where it is, but it's like it's outside San Francisco. Uh, and anyway, the reference point for that video I'd sent to Andrew, and he was like, he looked into what else they'd done. They'd done Story So Far and a few other bands, and he wasn't jumping for joy. He was like, "Do you think they?" He's like, "I don't know." He just was like unsure, and I kind of had to convince him. So I convinced him and said, "No, look, if we go in and tell them what we want, and you kind of put your foot down, like make sure." You don't want it to sound like this. You do want it to sound like that. If you lead that, if you lead the charge, then I'm sure it'll be fine. But I'm convincing him at this point because
And by the way, we're going to be in California. It's just right there. Producer Bryan. So it's where is the studio located?
Hey Bob, it's Brian. So Panda Studios is in Fremont, which is just south of San Francisco. From Oxnard, we're looking at about once again 300 miles. That's
okay. I mean, it's all relative. Yeah,
He's
right
mile
there.
blind. If it's 300 miles, he's got the mileage blinders.
Round the way, So, all right. So you're doing some convincing at this point.
yeah. And I convince him. Everyone agrees we're gonna go there. And so I think maybe me or Tom hits up Panda Studios to find out if they're free. They are. And we say, okay, let's do a week. We'll do a week there and we'll record an album. And it all got booked. And yeah, we went out there and that was like just again, it was kind of the back of our minds because the whole record wasn't written at this point. I knew we maybe had half, maybe 7 songs, maybe. We knew we'd have to like demo and work a lot of the songs out when we get there, but that was kind of exciting. Like, oh, no pressure. We're gonna break up anyway. Like, just whatever. It's just like a parting.
Let's just do
it's a
this
parting
little...
gift. Yeah. No, it wasn't. No, it wasn't like that. But it was definitely very. It was just relaxed. Like, okay, cool. It'll be fun. And yeah, so that was like set in stone, and we flew there, and just hit the ground running.
Different than the recording in the
Yeah, I mean, obviously we're in California for the first time. Remember that, so everything is exciting. We go to a Walmart, our eyes are like, "Oh my goodness! Like, look at all these cereals. Oh, look at this! Like, whoa! Like,
I think that's on the California Tourism Board. Is check out our Walmarts.
Well, Alex, you had been to America previously in your life.
Yeah, I've been to America a lot, but I hadn't been.
Had the other guys been to, like, it was your first time in California, but was for any of the other guys, was it first time in America or?
It wasn't my. Actually, I just realized I'd been on tour with Man Overboard out to the West Coast. I think that was a full US. Yeah, I had been out there once, and the other guys had never been. Maybe once as a kid, maybe,
Sure.
but this was like to go
The
as an
first
adult
time knee deep in California.
for sure. And so everything was exciting. The weather was amazing. We just like we were on our food kick at that point. We just like wanted to try everything. And so everything was just exciting. Like we always look back on that time really fondly, not only because you're recording and that's always fun to like do, but you're in a different country and America of all places, the coolest place ever, and you're so excited. So yeah, it was just a very exciting time. We were very wide-eyed and And even with recording, this felt like a big, I wouldn't say a big studio, but it felt this was, yes, leaps and bounds ahead of where we'd recorded in the past. And just being in America making a record was very exciting.
Do you think the position of the band having preparing for hiatus, we're saying breakup, hiatus interchangeably, but knowing there was a finality to it, do you think that impacted the sound of the record? Do you think that impacted your recording experience? Maybe it was more pressure, maybe it was less pressure. How did you feel going into it?
Yeah, I would say I don't think there wasn't a point that I felt pressure, as in it just we weren't going to play shows, so it did feel very natural. And again, like I said, we wrote a bunch of songs in the studio. We ran a bunch of stuff for the first time in the studio. If anything, maybe it was just like, oh, bit of a time crunch, but no, we did it. We worked really long hours, and we slept there so we could just wake up and just yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think the pressure that was probably the last probably the last time in my life I didn't feel pressure in a studio. But no, it was after that it was game
Just
over.
everything's
Yeah.
high stress situations, huh?
Yeah. No, that one was I love looking back and thinking maybe the time crunch, that kind of stress, but it's not a stress, it's just like, hey, we got to keep it moving. And it's just that kind of that pulse of like moving, going is like it's
So, when we talk about that, like you mentioned you had some songs going in the studio, you wrapped them up. Where was the sequencing of the songs, the order of the songs? I know this is kind of like, I don't want to get too in the weeds, but I think a lot about that kind of stuff and how you write songs, you specifically saying that. Did it feel organic? Does it feel very natural when you start to put that together for the order of the record? Like when you sequence it, did it all just fall into place, or was that something you had to kind of figure out?
I'm gonna be honest, I don't think back then I mean I definitely cared. I think Andrew was definitely had more of a vision with regard to track listing, but there was no like, no, this has to go here, like no, this can't be there. Whereas with Fiddlehead, Pat is like, oh my goodness, it's like he has a vision from God of like how it has to go, and like he's so meticulous about it. No, that was not like that.
Okay.
I remember titling the songs, and I remember that every song is one word except Bad Apple, but we just did we just say it's one word? I can't remember. Yeah, we just
You
I
smeared
do
it, bad apple. Yeah.
yeah, I remember Jeff being like, dude, there's a Pearl Jam song called Black, and I'm like, I know, but we're just like
It's a really good Pearl Jam.
I
Wait,
know.
hold on. What's the
Maybe
thing?
the best
Are there
one.
like at least three Pearl Jam big fans on this call? Like I'm a
Yeah.
big Pearl Jam. Okay.
We got
Yeah.
4.5.
Wow. I love it. Love to hear it. Okay. We'll
But
be
yeah,
pivoting to the Pearl Jam podcast
yeah.
shortly.
No, so I don't remember so much having like big conversations about track listing, but I remember titling the songs and like talking about that, and there was maybe some lyrical things that we kind of talked about, but I remember doing the artwork and the layout in the studio. I think there's some footage of that. Like Crab had already done our drummer James had done the artwork, and I was kind of putting it together in the studio. And I remember specifically getting ready to tweet. Yeah, Twitter was around. Yeah, we tweeted out like, "Hey, we're see ya." Like, and I
Yeah.
remember we posted the album cover and like our little thing, and I was like, posted it, and we watched it live. Like, kind of people respond.
Yeah.
And we were just like, it's kind of like you push the button for the bomb goes off, and then everyone's just like, oh, and like you're like looking and seeing like the feedback and like people saying things like, what? Like excited that there was a record, but also like, wait, what are you doing? Kind of thing. And we were all just like, oh, well, that's real now. Put that out there. Um,
Yeah. All of a sudden it's real. It's
yeah.
there.
No, I do. I remember the specifics of like pressing send. I don't know if we all joined hands and went.
Yeah,
"Doot."
yeah. Everybody put it at the same time.
Yeah, no, I don't think it was that dramatic, but we definitely all sat around in the studio and we posted it from the studio. And we said how
Uh-huh.
like, hey, these shows like I think we said something about recording and then going from like the West Coast back to the East Coast and how we were gonna have like only a few shows left and yeah. So because I think we announced that the last show of that tour which was in Altoona, Pennsylvania, or somewhere random in Pennsylvania. It was like,
Right.
that's gonna be our final US show. Um, and yeah, I do remember that specifically.
So that actually brings us to an interesting point, which we were getting into a little bit prior. It's a weird thing to put out a record when you're breaking up, and said this. It was sort of like, hey, we're announcing the record and the situation at the same time. Uh, Jeff, I'd like to start with you. What's your memory of that and the thoughts? I mean, obviously it's different because the label's at such a different space now than it was before. So back then it was a little different. What were your thoughts? Like, how do we do this? Like, were there any mechanicals in there? Were you like, hey guys, when you're in the studio, make sure you all push the button at the same time to send the tweet? Like, you tell me what you had.
I think more than anything, from the record label perspective, it probably just put a lot more attention on the record being announced, I think. I mean, I already knew they were going to break up, so um I mean, I remember also watching the tweet and reading the responses live, and yeah, it was a lot of excitement and a lot of like confusion and disappointedness all at the same time.
Isn't this a funny case of the modern condition? Like, yeah, I remember watching that tweet.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I can't
I mean, I
imagine
have so
what
many
it
things like that too. You know what I mean? It is.
I can't imagine what it felt like to, make that record and then while you're in the studio tweet that your band is over.
Yeah, what was that? Geez, man.
Yeah, I think, like I said, I was like, what are we doing? In my head, at this point, obviously, I'd accepted. Like, I already knew however many months before, like, but I think like I said, I knew deep down we'll be back. We will play these songs live. I was like, there's just no way. There's no way that we're not going to play these songs. Like, I might have to wait it out, but it's like maybe when Andrew's finished with school, maybe when, just in my head, I was like, just let it go. You have to just let it go, and maybe it will come back. But there was something about it, especially maybe after it had been released. Actually, no, even in the studio, I felt pretty confident. I was like, no, we're gonna do this.
Well,
It's just gonna take time, but actually, maybe I'm being overly confident. I'm trying to remember because I remember being in RFC when the records came in, and I actually doodled on a few of them. There's like some drawings, like I signed a bunch of them. Um, and
Well,
I
what was
think,
sorry, go ahead.
and I'm just thinking about, like, at that point, again, no sign of us playing shows still, but I had seen that people were buying the record, talking about it. So I knew people liked it. I knew that it was going well. And then I think it just started really ramping up. Maybe once the songs had been out for maybe about 6 months to a year, it felt like people really liked the record. And I knew that. And then, especially working at RFC, once I was there, I was like, oh, people would comment about, are you ever going to play shows again? What's up with Basement? Like, I would see the orders. I just had a good kind of, I had a good view of everything going on since I did all like the media stuff at RFC, that I was like, oh, yeah, people like Basement. This is cool. Okay, people want to see this record live one day. And so it was just in the back of my mind, like, just gotta wait. Just gotta wait.
Yeah, where did because the final, the London, it was London and Glasgow, right?
No,
The
leads in London.
Leeds in
hmm.
London. Like where in the timeline did those shows start getting talked about or booked? Was that your recording and you're like, well, we don't want to leave without ever playing these songs live? Or was it well kind of after the fact where you're like, well, we could just do a final show or something?
Um, Once we knew like Andrew's kind of schedule and like what he was going to do for school, it was like, I'm assuming we just knew, okay, we need to book it in this time period. It wasn't even that long after. I think, if let's say we toured and recorded that summer, I think those final shows were in December. So it was
Hmm.
just like, okay, done. Like, wash my hands clean of it. It's already done this year. And yeah, we performed them I'm pretty sure it was like in Christmas time, over Christmas time. Um, And yeah, we probably would have spoken to our booking agent Anna and said, "Can we just book 2 shows and just do something small?" And yeah, we did it over a weekend.
And those shows didn't turn out to be too small though. if memory serves. Is that correct? They
Well,
weren't that small.
at the time, at the time, I thought they were big.
Yeah.
At the time, I thought, oh my goodness, whoa, 500 people, whoa, like that's crazy, you know. Actually, yeah, Underworld is 500, yeah, about 500, and so
The other show was bigger, wasn't it?
I think Leeds was bigger, had to have been. I think you can fit more people in there.
Yeah.
But about 500 people, maybe something
But
like
to
that.
that point too, was that, for you guys playing on your own, that was like, whoa.
Oh, oh my goodness. Headlining the Underworld. Are you kidding me? I'm like, whoa, our name's gonna be up there on Underworld, like, on the signage and like just yeah, it felt very, very exciting. And
Give context to the world. I mean, look, I don't feel like it's totally necessary, but people should know how big a deal the underworld is. Can you give some background on that? Like
yeah, I can
headlining there, just for a young person, an old person, and maybe perhaps not so worldly person. Tell us the underworld.
so the Underworld is right in the heart of Camden, like in Camden, London. And Camden is famous for being like a hub of like punk music. It has
It's the
like
freak scene. Yeah, it's the
yeah,
weirdo
it's yeah,
area.
you go there to get your Doc Martens, you go there to get your bootleg Sex Pistols shirt, Rancid shirt, whatever, and you just go there just to walk around and be like, oh, like you go there as a teenager, or maybe you like, you get to high school and you're like, oh, I'm gonna go to London for the weekend. That's what kind of me and my friends would do. And like you'd go there, even if you just walked around Camden, like, you felt cool or you felt like, oh yeah, this is like the world of like punk, and you'd see things and it's just like yeah, it's just a lot going on. And so right in the heart of that punk alternative hub is this venue. Like you get out of the tube station and you see the underworld,
Yeah,
and you would see like on there like the names of different bands playing there, and it's just, especially growing up in England, that was the spot
yeah.
for punk and hardcore. And for me, going to some of the most memorable hardcore shows of my life was going to the underworld and seeing bands and being kind of scared and hiding behind the pillar, and then eventually getting a little bit more confident and like moshing and stage diving and being like, oh, this is like my venue. This is like me and my friends. We would go there and meet up, and but still kind of scared. Still like, oh boy, who's gonna like spin kick me in the head? Um, but yeah, so to headline it was a huge, huge deal. Huge deal. And I got to go back there recently with Fiddlehead, and we played there, and it still felt like a huge deal. Still was so excited to sell it out was like incredible.
Mm.
But once I got in there, I was like, oh my word, it is so small. It is so tiny. The ceiling is so low. There's a pillar right in the middle of the pit. The stage is it's like a little diamond triangle.
Yeah.
It's just so cramped and it gets so hot. And but yeah, it's incredible, and I'm so glad it's still there, and it's just a pillar of that world. And so to play there, I remember the first time we ever got to play there, and I remember even up to recent days getting to play there. It's very special.
So so just sequence me here correctly, guys, because I'm outside this loop. The record's announced. The hiatus is announced. Are the shows announced at the same time, or is that later?
I want to say later. I actually
Okay.
can't confirm that. But yeah, we announce the cool thing is that we announce the record and the hiatus, and then the next day we drive down to Sound and Fury and we play Sound and Fury, and then we tour with Dead End Path, Soul Search, and Daylight from the West Coast to the East Coast. So all these dates we're like playing, and you're like playing songs and talking to people, and it's just we're having the best time ever with our friends. But yeah, there's definitely people who are like the whole time just being like, "What are you doing?" Like, "Wait, what? You're breaking up?" Just I like want to hear the record, and we were getting mixes and we were showing like Daylight, and they were like
Mhm.
hyped. It was a
Yeah.
good feeling. It was a good feeling.
The basement set at Sound and Fury that year is one of those legendary ones as well. So
Oh, and we were like, for us to play Sound and Fury, oh
mm,
my goodness, that's early days. So we were just like, whoa, like we're just so excited to be there. Fully in that mode of like you want to like mosh to every band. You're like low, like keeping your eyes low because you're like, oh my goodness, that's so and so from Ceremony, or like you're just like so enamored by the whole scene, and you feel like kind of an outsider, but you've got a sneak peek into that world, and you're just we're from
mm,
England. You got to remember, we're from England. This is not
yeah.
normal. Like there is no one there from England. It feels very special. Like very, very, very special to be welcomed into that world and accepted and just shown a lot of love. It's hard to explain that to people because it's just, especially if you're from America, it's just, there's just no words. Everything is exciting. Just whatever would think it would be exciting, times it by 10 because we're just from a small little island and it just feels like a foreign world.
Well, I mean, it's part of the conversation I had, and I don't even know how to eloquate it properly, but there for a long time, and it may still, you inform me better than this. I think it's hard for international bands, even ones with a limited language barrier, like from England to the United States, um, to find success even in the small pocket worlds, in subculture music, in niche things, to find acceptance, let alone embrace. And I don't, I thought it was fair to say that Basement, you certainly worked for it, you pushed for it,
Yeah.
but you found that. And I don't, I always think that outsider perspective on it. Did you feel as though it was hard? Did you feel like you had found some sort of magic sauce, or was it just kind of you clued into something, the right time, the right place? You tell me.
It was 100% the right time, right place, but also we grinded. We, I mean, at the time, it did not feel like grinding because we just loved it so much and the pure love of touring and just sleeping on floors and just getting in the van and just making no money. Didn't matter. Who cares? I'll do it for 3 months straight. Just so excited to do it. But yeah, we worked hard, especially when we came back and played shows. We just toured the US relentlessly. And but also we were able to do that because people were supporting us, because Run for Cover had this built-in scene. It had built a world that people were responding to, and there was a genuine amount of excitement, like every band, Balance and Composure, Title Fight, Tiger's Jaw, like there's just the
Daylight,
list
right?
goes on. Yeah, Daylight, everyone's releasing records. It's exciting. Like modern baseball's now coming up. Like there's the new generation, Citizen Turnover. It's like,
Yeah.
oh my goodness, we're in it. We were in that world and we still are in that world, but it's just like at that time, it just felt like something special is happening and we're just so thankful to be there. So yeah, right time, right place, but also just putting in the work and just yeah, I think that's why I'm like so grateful maybe that like a song like Covet that's had a new lease of life because of the internet, and it's nice to like you kind of get like this like strange retroactive pat on the back of like you put all this work in, it's so hard, like and you do sacrifice a lot. I think people don't realize you sacrifice relationships and missing like weddings and funerals and like just really
Yeah.
big things because you're just away, but you're willing to like just sacrifice it all regardless of money or whatever you've measured success in. And it's nice to like see like, oh, people like the song, or like it's touching people, reaching people now who are younger, who maybe are in high school, and it's like kind of, I don't know, it's just a really cool feeling. I feel super blessed to see that and get excited if I meet someone who's like younger and they're like, "Oh, I love that song. Found out about it like 2 weeks ago." I'm like, "Wow, that's epic. That is so cool." Like that was just so long ago, but it's a really cool feeling.
So, I mean, Basement has a pretty impressive discography, and we're focusing on one record here today. But would this be, if you were talking to a person who had never heard Basement before, would Color Me in Kindness be where you would point them, or is it somewhere else?
Yeah, usually that one. I think it's like, I mean, it depends. Depends what the person's coming from musically or like kind of if they're into subculture or not. If they're totally not, maybe I would say no, no, yeah, no, yeah, this one, yeah,
Is
this
it
one,
okay? All right,
yeah.
easy
That
answer. You didn't
it
want to
has like
overthink it. Don't
no,
overthink it.
I am not overthinking it. There's a little bit of everything, If I'm like, oh, they like pop music, I'm like, oh, I listen to the song Pine. It's a pop song,
Right.
If they're into something a little bit heavier, it's like, oh, I can show them Spoiled and be like, kind of sick. They're on the same record. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, a little bit of everything.
Okay. So I guess I'm commandeering here. I want to wrap here. Oh wait, hold on. Boop boop boop. Producer Bryan, please chime in. Um, I believe you've uncovered, you've dug the annals of the internet. Can you please tell us
Dude,
what you found?
I've been searching for like 15 minutes. I haven't been listening to a word you guys have said. I'm sorry. It's all well and wonderful. But no, I was trying to find the initial tweet that you guys have been talking about the breakup that had so much traction. But Twitter, now X, they've killed the advanced search. It's absolutely cooked. But
Yes.
I was able to find I was going through Tumblr, as one does in
Hey, we were a
2024.
Tumblr band. We were a Tumblr
we
band.
we were we are a Tumblr label still. But no, I was able to find the initial thank you post that you guys had posted on 19 July 2012 to keep it in the English
EU
format.
framing. Yeah.
Exactly. But yeah, people someone reblogged it a year later, said a year today. So I think you guys have made a sizable impact on people's lives that they're 1 year later they were like, oh, the worst day of my life. Cool. Awesome.
Well, there you
I
have it.
got a question for you, Al.
Hit me.
What was it like on your first US tour? Or I guess it wasn't your first tour. The tour that you did with Daylight, where you played a skate park in Massachusetts. Do you
That was the
remember
first one. That was the first
that?
one. Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
so that was the first tour.
I'm
What was it
sorry.
like coming back to America and playing like 1,500 capacity venues after playing skate parks and rundown bars?
Yeah, I mean, we look back on that first New York show at Webster Hall, the one that got bumped from the basement to the middle room to the top room. We talk about that being one of the most formative and memorable shows we've ever played because the last time we'd played in New York was to 50 people in a tiny bar. And it wasn't a particularly wild show. It was great that there were 50 people there, but overwhelmed with emotion and just honestly just couldn't believe it. It was yeah, I mean, you're timesing the underworld by three. It was 1,500 people, and it's a giant, beautiful room. The history of Webster Hall as well, with like just all the shows that have gone down there. Yeah, I guess we couldn't really fathom it. It was just unreal, and that whole tour was just the major markets. It was like Boston, New York, Chicago, LA, San Francisco. It was like very short,
Yeah.
and each show
So
was like massive, and yeah, it was. I mean, tears were shed after the New York show for sure. We were just like, oh my goodness, that was couldn't have prepared for that show. Not even close.
I guess we really left it open ended. Jeff, thank you for bringing us there because you were right. Basement did come back. You came back and you're like, yeah. So you were
Everyone's
right.
on the edge of their seat wondering if they ever got back.
Whatever happened to this
Did they
little
do it? Did they
basement
not
band?
do it? Was he right? Did they come back?
There's two parts to this, and then I'm gonna get you with some quick questions as we close out. But what was the make? So we talked about the breakup conversation, the I want to go to school and what have you. What was the let's get back together conversation?
It's actually really beautiful. Andrew, Andrew, I'm sorry if I butchered this story, but basically, I think for a long time Andrew had thought, uh, doing the kind of traditional career path, going to school and having maybe a more regular 9 to 5. He'd been going to school to become a teacher and to get his degree in that. And he was a teacher. He graduated and was teaching and enjoying it, loving it, was telling me great stories. And part of that is, the perception of your parents. Like, what do they think of what I'm doing? And I think I felt that pressure for sure. I feel like probably most people do when they're in there like between 18 and 22 of like, what am I going to do with my life? And he thought that was, fulfilling maybe that more responsible thing to do. And his dad turned around to him when he, had been teaching for maybe about a year or close to a year and was like, "Hey, what's up with the band stuff? What, you're not going to do the music stuff anymore?" And they had a conversation about it, and he was like, "You should really, I think he'd maybe said to him that people still like the record, and he'd asked him some questions. He's like, "Yeah, people like it. Like people are into it." He's like, "You should why not do it? Why not? Like why not?" And I think for him, hearing his dad say like you should do it, you're like you're good at it, and him liking the music. His dad's a big fan of music, and I think getting that approval of something maybe he wasn't sure of from his own father was huge, and that was
Yeah.
like maybe we should play a few shows. It wasn't like, hey, let's be a full-time touring band, but it was like, what would it look like if we played a few shows? And I think he probably maybe hit the group chat and was like, "Well, is this something that we might be able to do, And
How long
and
after the last shows was this?
I say 2 years, but I don't even think it was 2 years. Maybe it was. I don't know. I'd have to look at the dates. Producer Brian could maybe get on it. Actually, no, Brian, I don't want to know because if it's not, if it's less than 2 years, it felt like 2 years. Let's just say that.
It's got to be 2 years max. Like it was pretty quick.
Yeah. And I mean, once I heard that from Andrew, I was like, dude, yes, people will like, yes, we can do this. It wasn't, I was like, yes. I've been at the label now for about a year and a half, and I knew the shows would be good. I knew that people wanted to see the record, especially in the US, since we hadn't played it yet in the States. And so that's what we did. We played a few shows, and it was just an overwhelming response, positive response. And we hit the ground running after that, and went full time for a few years. And eventually that took its toll too, and we realized we are going to take a little break and like take a step back from it. And then COVID hit, and then here we are now, probably having a similar conversation of like, all right, what does it look like to play some shows again?
Right.
It's kind of serendipitous that we're back in a kind of similar place where we've taken some time off. This time actually way longer than previously. But it's nice to see that the songs have endured, and it would be fine if they didn't. I had, you know, all of the shows and all the history of the band, even just talking about it now, like makes me smile and makes me happy. But knowing that, oh, there's more shows to play, there's more memories to be had, and there's more songs to be written is like, it excites me. It gives, I'm proud. I'm really proud of that. It wasn't just like a moment that was there and now gone. It's like people still seem to connect with the songs. It's a great feeling.
So there's so much this could go on for hours, but we're not going to subject that. We've already had one bathroom break. We're going to just keep it to that. Good job, producer Brian, for editing that nicely so no one knew. I have some quick questions for you, Al. We're going to kind of close out with random thoughts, some to do with the record, Color Me in Kindness, some just in general about you and Basement. Are you ready?
Am I ready? Oh, yes. I thought that was the first.
He wasn't
That
ready.
is, I guess it is the first
Question
question.
one.
But
Are you ready?
Yeah.
Yes, I am ready. I am ready.
What's your favorite piece of Basement merch?
Good question.
He
Yeah,
wasn't
well,
ready.
okay, I wasn't ready. Okay, the first one that is not my favorite, but it just popped into my head. That's kind of.
Mhm.
I don't think I should say this. There was no,
Come
scratch it.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, it's that one. It's that one.
I found a random image in this old like 1930s book of a girl on fire, and it's just it's like a girl running
Okay.
away of like what you should do if you're on fire. It just says basement, and it's like a old image. And we printed that shirt, and it just popped into my head of not my favorite shirt, but I'm like, that shirt is a girl on fire. Like that is insane. Like, but my favorite shirt, there's one that James drew that is there's like two cats sitting on a sofa, and it's
Yeah.
I found that as like an actual little antique wooden thing that I found, and I gave it to Andrew as a gift, and James saw it and drew it. So some sentimental value, but I always liked the way that one looked. Maybe that one.
Okay.
I'm going blank. It's there's so many that flood
There's
to my
a
brain.
lot. All right. While the other guys think of some random questions too, I've got hundreds. But where did the Basement B come from? This is like the iconic Basement merch design.
Yeah,
But it is
people like
quite
that.
simple. It's just so simple.
Yeah, that was me. I think there was a skateboarding t-shirt that I saw. I forget it might have been Huff. Huff
Mhm.
had just a giant H on the back of their shirt. And I was like, oh, what if it was just something as big as just the bee, like a giant like bee on the back that was just like eye-catching. And so, oh man, I wish I could bring up how I made that bee because it's like a custom. I did such a horrendous job of making this like custom bee that I needed to be like, oh, I need to be stretched a little bit. I didn't want to just take a simple like bee. I
Yeah.
like made it myself, but through like, you'd bring in like a block and extend it out to make the bee a little chunkier, like just the most
Yeah.
primitive way. But
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
I made that, and then I remember putting up on Cold Cuts, and it was like John was telling me like, "Oh, we've sold like a ton of these. Like we owe you money." Like, it's like, oh, whoa, that's cool. And that was like probably post Color Me in Kindness.
The number of those hoodies that are out in the world is astronomical. It's not something I will. It's just astronomical. It's outrageous.
Well, the
It's
cool
amazing.
thing is sometimes you see them and they've been worn in since like, a kid had it in high school. And I'm like, dang, kind of looks vintage. Like it looks sick. Like
Yeah, now you need to get some of those.
no, for real. Seeing some of the earlier basement shirts where people have just skated in them, they thrashed them up at shows, like now they look really cool. So
What is one song on Color Me in Kindness that you don't think gets the love it deserves?
um
Stumped. My answer is Wish, but you can give yours.
that's good. I think I went off that song, if I'm being honest, that I felt like it was leaning too much. We were talking about the Pearl Jam and the kind of like,
Mm-hmm.
the whole like new grunge thing that kind of got labeled the same way that like shoegaze got like labeled. I felt like that one was the one that kind of lent a little bit too hard into that realm. So I felt maybe a little bit like self-conscious about that song. But I am impressed with when I listen to it. I'm like, that's a big sounding song.
Yeah.
Um, but we don't really play it that much. We did play it
Mm.
at Outbreak, and
Don't worry,
it,
we'll take it. It'll come off the next reissue. It's gonna just take it off. That's fine. That's
just take
fine.
it
It's
off.
not a big deal.
But yeah,
What's the
maybe
song
not
that deserves more love? Come on.
deserves more love. I don't know, people. I don't know. I don't. It's a hard question. I don't think there's one that I'm like
Okay.
that. I feel like overall, when we play most of those songs, it feels good. There's never a song I'm like, how come people didn't go off to that song? It's like, yeah, it feels pretty good, equally balanced.
Okay. Would you rather swallow a rock or a marble?
I've swallowed a marble by accident when I was a kid. I was playing with it. I threw it up. It hit the ceiling. I looked up and I swallowed it
So why did you throw the marble up?
because we were doing some like
What
trick
kind
shot
of
or something.
marble game is this?
I don't know. It's England.
Okay, let's see. Other random
You weren't ready
questions.
for that. You weren't ready for that answer.
I just wasn't ready for the next question to give you. From
I
Color
don't.
Me in Kindness, really quick. From Color Me in Kindness, if you love this record, go listen to insert a record by a not Basement. Insert another. If you love Color Me in Kindness, please go listen to. Don't say Fiddlehead.
Diary by Sunny Day Real Estate.
Excellent, Dane.
I just think it's worth mentioning that not every band that is making music for over a decade like maintains the same members in the band, and the fact that y'all have been in various stages of being in a band and not being in a band together, just on a personal level, like some people might still be a band, but they might not be as close friends as they once were when they started it. And you guys have been tight for a really long time, played music in different ways for a really long time. Outside of band stuff, because you're together a lot of times for tour, writing, recording, or whatever, um, what's like a shared activity or something fun that you guys bond over non-music wise that like keeps your friendship going outside of music?
Mm.
Or a small thing that we love to do when we're together is watch YouTube together. Everyone pulling up like ridiculous videos, and we'll just sit around. We love to watch other bands play. Honestly, we'll like go on Hate56 and like watch like a band play and like watch live set. And we used to do that when before even Basement was a band. You'd be like watching other bands play and get excited and see like how wild the shows were and like who's stage diving, who's moshing. You need the mosh cam. But when we were back in the UK, you go to the pub and just hang out, and that's always a nice one with the lads. And then yeah, we were all together recently, and we watched a movie together. But I wouldn't say there's a common. Two of the guys used to do jujitsu together, MMA for some of the guys as well. But I don't think there's like a. I'm trying to think of a universal hobby that we all have, and I don't think we do. I think it's
Eating
more just
food.
eating food. There we go. Oh my goodness. It's eating food. What am I talking about? Yes, it's eating food. Oh my goodness. They talk
what
about it all the time.
What is the most memorable Basement meal that you had
Um,
as a group full all
early,
together?
early days, and we talk about this a lot. There was this place called in Boston, Junkyard Dogs. What was it, Dane? What was it?
Spikes.
Spikes, Junkyard
Spikes.
Dogs.
Oh,
For some reason,
Spikes.
we went and had it's not just hot dogs and fries.
Yep.
But for some reason we were enamored by it and it felt incredible. That and Cookout were two big ones that all in the early days we couldn't believe it. Um, I need to find the documentary that I made, and there's a moment when we went to Cookout for the first time. We were very excited.
So I believe Jeff came on tour with Basement, maybe right before this record in the UK. Is that correct?
Yeah, yes. I was like, Jeff's never wait. Yep, in England. Yeah.
Please tell me at least one good story from that tour with Jeff.
Jeff got stuck in, was it Scotland, Jeff? Where did you get stuck?
Yeah, it was Scotland.
Yeah, he couldn't fly with us, and so we had to leave him behind.
Pat Kinlan handed me all the boarding passes and said, hand these out to everybody. It was probably like 15 people. And I handed everyone out, and there wasn't one for me. And I was like, well, see you guys in a few days.
Yeah.
Wow.
That was good. But I also remember, Jeff, you remember when we stayed in this person's house in Scotland? It felt like a really nice apartment, and we were just hanging out and talking about music, and maybe you were playing guitar, and we were impressed that you could like do some like crazy like finger picking guitar stuff.
Yeah, I remember there was like comfortable couches and stuff for the first time in like days.
Yeah, and we were just hanging, and it was just like a really good memory.
And Andrew cooked a meal that night. I didn't understand Andrew's love of food or cooking yet, and his cooking blew my mind.
Yeah.
Do you remember the meal? What was it?
I don't.
Maybe a curry. I'm trying to think of what you can make for
like
a lot
that.
of people. Yeah. He does love to cook.
If you were, and I will close on this because, hey, if you were to pick a meal for the rest of the Basement guys, well, maybe we got a few more, but if you were to make a meal for the rest of the Basement guys, what would it be?
If I was really good at cooking, I would love to make them a good Sunday roast and with all the trimmings and sit around, and there's nothing better than have a big old roast because, we've had Thanksgiving in America together. We've had a Sunday roast together. Yeah, I don't know, maybe a roast. That just feels like British. It feels like home.
Nothing better than a big old roast.
Roast. Yeah, if anyone's listening in America and you're not sure what a roast is, just think Thanksgiving. It's like that kind of meat and potatoes meal.
Is there a chance that we hear new Basement music?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, we took some time away, and when we started talking about the band again, it was all about how we missed writing, being creative together. And so I'd flown over and just met with Andrew, and we just had written, we just got guitars out, and we just like, I wonder if anything would happen. I wonder if like ideas would flow, and things started flowing. And next thing you know, we like had jammed out a few songs, and it felt good. And then we got everyone else together, and we were writing. And then recently we all had another session together. So yeah, we're working on stuff, and it's hard because we talked about the expectation. You brought that up, and it's been a while. So there's a lot of like trying to tap into what feels good for us. What is exciting for us, and try and let go of all of these like past records. And it's been really interesting. At times it's been really hard, and then other times it just felt so natural, and that's like kind of what keeps spurring us on. And we recently wrote some songs, and it just happened like that. It was just like went through 4 songs pretty quickly without overthinking it, and we all left being really excited about it. So yeah, we are working on stuff. I can't wait. I can't wait to be able to go to a studio and properly lay down these ideas, but we're working on it. I think it's going to be something really special.
Favorite RFC office moment?
Oh my days. There's too many, man. We had so many good times. I mean, honestly, recording any of the skits, if anyone doesn't know, I used to run the YouTube for Run for Cover, and we had a few segments, and sometimes we would just straight up just do these like comedy skits, which is so ridiculous. But so anytime I get Bryan to do an accent or put on an outfit is a great it was a great moment.
Producer Bryan.
Producer Bryan. Yeah, Captain. Anytime that I could we get him to put on an accent was great. But no, one time Jeff was playing with this giant water bottle and he's like
Hmm.
flicking it and throwing it, and it bounced off he threw it and it flipped off the floor and hit me in the eye and gave me a giant black eye and a cut under my
Yeah,
eye.
his eyeball filled with blood.
Yeah,
Bleeding into his eye.
it was very crazy. No, there's so many good memories. I loved all the stuff we did there and all the stuff we accomplished. And I think about, oh my goodness, imagine if we'd done that now with like TikTok. Holy cow, that would have been next level. But hey, we were pre the content era. We were just doing it for the love of the game, you know?
You know, there is an archive page of somebody just uploading those videos to TikTok. So they're on TikTok.
Wow.
Um, but
Wow.
yeah, too early.
Too early. I do love seeing sometimes I get recommended videos on my feed on Instagram of like, hey, we're a label and like here are 10 records that we're listening to, and they'll do that real quick and I'm like, oh yeah, that we'd always do stuff like that, put people on, make playlists, like people would ask what you guys listening to, and I always loved that to and to ask other people what they're listening to and ask us to check things out. I loved that kind of like call and response of what people are listening to, what people are excited about, and people asking us, have you heard this? What do you think of this? That was always really fun.
So, Al, I think we're about to close out here, but I had one last question because the idea that you wrote so many of these songs just kind of organically in your basement, just playing guitar to yourself. The concept that which you hit on, the idea of when those songs are just yours before anyone else hears them, what would your advice mention, whatever, what would your suggestion be to someone who's out there who is creating or struggling to create or is in that moment before they're putting it out to the world? What would your advice be to someone who's there, but maybe hasn't quite gotten it out to people yet?
Yeah, I want to try and give something kind of practical, like a practical advice rather than just like, oh, just don't overthink it. Um,
Sure.
I think you want to look for that feeling of excitement that you're gonna get. Try and strip away what other people are going to think. Say if you're in a band, like what is the stuff where you look around at each other and you're genuinely excited, not like, okay, if we write this part, like people are going to do this, like, or like they're going to sing along to this, or they're going to mosh to this part. If you're in a band that has like a kind of that kind of response, like, or even just sing along. I think it's just play until you're excited, and like it's just undeniable. When you look around, you're like, that's really excited. Like I'm excited about this, and then just go for it and try and not. It's like you don't want to take into account what other people are going to think. It's really hard. It's one of the hardest things to do because you sometimes put stuff out and it doesn't hit and it hurts and it's really hard. But it's worth it to do that rather be constantly making music to try and impress other people or write things for other people. You won't be satisfied. Like you write the stuff that you're going to be excited about, the stuff you enjoy playing. Oh my goodness, write the stuff you enjoy playing. Like, oh, that's a fun riff to play. There you go. Now you're gonna have fun when you play it. Like,
Oh yeah,
and
everyone.
and last thing, it's good to have goals. I thought like, oh, it'd be amazing to be on Run for Cover. It would be amazing to play with XY band. But like, set goals for sure. But it's just making music with your friends and getting to play your local pub or your local venue. That's great. Aim. That's great. The idea of like, I want to be famous. I want to be viral. It's like, it's just not. That's not a great life. I just don't believe that is for the realistic smaller things. I know it sounds, I don't know. Some people are like, no, aim for the stars, but I don't know if that's successful. I don't know. Maybe I'm totally wrong here,
Let's
but
say aim to play music that excites you with your friends.
yeah. I think if it and sometimes it resonates with people. Sometimes it does. And sometimes it doesn't. But at the end of the day, you're the one who has to play the song, you know? Like you want to get up and enjoy that moment with your friends. Like and not beating yourself up like, oh, why is it not hit? Why am I not da da da? You got to get out of that mindset and just enjoy it. And if it happens, awesome. If not, awesome. You're having a good time.
Everybody enjoy it. Thank you, Al.
Thank you guys. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Al. Love you.
Love you, man.
And that'll do it for this episode of the Run for Cover podcast. Thank you for listening. Thank you to our guest, Alex Henery. Be sure to check out Basement on tour in the U.S. in September and October. All dates at basementisaband.com. For the latest Run for Cover Records news, you can subscribe to this podcast feed. We'll have new episodes coming up routinely. You can also follow us on Instagram at Run for Cover. And subscribe to our YouTube page, where we're constantly updating with new music videos, behind-the-scenes content, live sessions. It's a great place to stay connected with everything going on at the label. Thanks for listening. Take care.